So hello, Joy. You are very welcome to Galway and to our festival gallery here for your really incredible and very, very powerful, must I say, exhibition, Precarious Freedoms, Crowds, Flags and Barriers. Fantastic title it has too. So listen, I think we'll kick straight into talking about the work, and we might tip a little bit then as the conversation flows, just a little bit about your career. But probably safe for me to say that maybe up until like 10 or 12 years ago, you know, you've done a lot of public works and a lot of great commissions. And then your work changed, and at around that time, you started to look at protests and the idea of people coming together to voice their opinions and to object to whatever needed to be objected to. And that was a very interesting shift. So do you want to maybe just tell us a little bit about how that came about and the progress of the work, say, from 10 years ago to today?
Sure, yeah, of course. Well, thank you. It's amazing to be here, and it's amazing to be part of the festival. To have this work, which is about crowds and congregations in the centre of Galway, is fantastic. I shifted, I suppose. I trained originally as a printmaker. Then I moved to London during the millennium, really. And I did, over about 10 years, I did a lot of public art projects. But the thing that kind of linked all the work was always a preoccupation with the urban, with architecture, and how people kind of use space, you know, how people utilize space, how they move through it, and always a kind of obsession with the aerial view as well, with the overview of the city. And then I suppose it was both a kind of external kind of set of events. During 2003, of course, there was the Iraq war broke out, and there was the largest mass protests in history, really, and they were very visually significant of the anti-war protests worldwide. And I started, I mean, that was 2003, so that was over 10 years ago. So I started looking at those works, and I was living in London at the time, and we, you know, a bit later on, we experienced 7/7. And I became very kind of preoccupied with cities and fear and how we react to events. And then the work about protest, it was kind of coming into my mind, but I suppose I really focused on it during the Arab Spring. And I wanted to start making work that I could kind of almost make at home and that was entirely kind of mine. So I started making the very small and very detailed drawings. And the original ones.
Were these drawings of images that you were watching on the screen, or from any kind of photo archive, or?
Yeah, so it's very important that the actual media images. I mean now I make work with both my own kind of photographic works and also media images, but this was stuff that was coming through, you know, on the television screen, you know, through social media, which was only beginning to kind of grow at that stage.
Which is what was fascinating about the Arab Spring protest, because at that time, I mean, like, that happened so quickly, and the voice and the message in Egypt got out through people's mobile phones, and people were using social media, which was a brand new explosion at that time.
Yeah, it became, I remember hearing this expression, the digital multitude. So this idea of the digital multitude, the physical crowd was kind of pulled together by the digital, you know, what used to have been spread with posters or word of mouth, you know, so that Twitter and everything else, you know, began to kind of explode. So the very first drawings of protests I made were really of Tower Square, and I probably made 10 or 11 of these super detailed kind of works. And then I began to really record different protest movements that were going on. But I worked on the very small scale for quite a while, until about 2015, 2016.
And always in monochrome?
Yeah, that's also an enduring feature of the work, that I kind of need that translation from the color. I need, you know, often when you're looking at these images, they're very small in their color and they're on your phone. And now it's really important that, you know, they're monochrome and that they are, and they're just getting bigger and bigger, I suppose. So.
And what's interesting, and it's incredibly striking when you walk into this gallery, and we're met immediately by this incredible screen to our side here, which is like an accordion panel, and it's very clearly it's almost like a helicopter view, if you like. incredibly powerful. But what's also very interesting about it is you see all these people who are protesting and objecting, and at the same time they seem to be kind of corralled just by the infrastructure of the city itself and of the architecture of a place. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and this particular one then, the screen?
Yeah, of course. This is one of the newest works, both the painting and it's called Barrier, Vigil and Protest. And so it's both a vigil and a protest. It's the event that happened after the Sarah Everard memorial on Clapham Common. And it was such a kind of emotional, kind of meaningful event that this protest took place in response to the murder, this tragic, awful murder of a young woman by a police officer. And then these images emerged on media of women being kind of grappled to the ground. And this protest happened the day after that. It was protesting kind of that event. And it was organised by Sisters Uncut. It's quite a small protest. So yes, what you're saying about the fact that the people of course are very much channeled by the architecture, and very much so in this image, they're also channeled by the lines of police. It's
and this is central London.
Yeah, this is central London. So they're going past Scotland Yard. And this was also a very, 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 very visible protest. It was on the news. It was very documented, and there was about an hour and a half of helicopter drone footage that was on ITV, and I used that footage to take the stills to make this work. So this work is actually the crowd is going up past Scotland Yard with the Thames there at the side in central London, and then the whole image actually flips over, and then if you understand, then the crowd goes down the other side. So the left-hand side is an extension of the right-hand side. So there's a kind of flip around of the crowd. It's doubled within the space.
And this is the march to Westminster, I think. If I remember correctly.
Yeah. And one of the things I find that I'm really interested in protest is obviously we all kind of wonder, what's the point of protest, and does it have an effect? What effect does it have? And this particular protest, apart from being a kind of a memorial and kind of really important expression of kind of sorrow, it did have an actual effect, because Keir Starmer turned around afterwards, after the visibility of this and the events of the night before, and Labour had changed their attitude about the incoming police bill in the UK, which will really, won't prevent protest, but it will really make elements of protest illegal, elements of sound and things like that. So this, I was really struck by this, and ended up working really hard to make this piece in time for the exhibition. I really wanted to make this piece about this event for this exhibition.
The timing of this particular protest then, was that early 2020?
No, it was mid-March 21.
Right, was it March
so
21?
Okay. I think it was 18th of March 2021.
So that's mid-COVID as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, the reason that there was so much it was during the memorial was during COVID, so it wasn't allowed. So the policing was overexpressed, but it was, the police were responding to they responded to the law, but they really took it too far.
And so do you, just then from a kind of practical point of view, in terms of kind of understanding how things emerge in your studio, do you always start small with your planning? Because I know you've got a very beautiful little maquette in the next room on the reading table.
So there's two drawings on the wall here, and what I would nearly always do if I could was there would be a drawing version of the larger piece first. So, and then I would look quite closely at the photographic work. I mean, this piece is really kind of collaged together, and then of course it's kind of very much broken up. So there's elements of abstraction start coming in much more in the paintings. The small drawings, all the work is made with black ink. So all the whites you see in the paper and the canvas is the white of the ground. And the ink is kind of diluted and kind of laid on top of it. And with the canvases, you work completely flat. But yes, to answer your question, it always begins with a drawing. Yeah.
And so then this is on the floor and it's sculptural in its form. Is that a relatively new thing for you?
Well, I think I've always thought kind of spatially, thought about how things work in space, because of the 15 very large, some of them very large public artworks. I've always been really interested in how things work in space. But I'm kind of really interested in the back of this work, the way that it really is a barrier, so
And it really is very powerful because when you walk around the back of it, you're just looking at these incredibly strong 8 black panels and a vast grey wall. It's really, it's really impactful, I thought, and it's, you're looking at it from the wrong way around, but that physical barrier is really
Well, it's
strong.
wonderful to come into the space and place that piece, and have people be able to experience it in the mind, and then also have it being able to place the Dark Europe piece, double height on the wall. That's really important to be able to do that.
What we refer to is our series of flags, 27 flags on the wall, and the UK flag hanging, or sadly leaning against the corner. So that's then I want to talk a little bit about that thematically in a moment. But this was very different in the Highlands Gallery, where it began, where it was incredibly powerful, but on a long row.
Yes, it was two. It was broken up. We used the same. We broke it up in the same way, but it was parallel. And when I originally did site visits in this space, I thought that would be there, and then I decided that we needed to put this space. So I think actually I'm really happy with how that kind of worked.
And so did this emerge then from Brexit and that time?
Yeah. So I was in Paris at the Irish Cultural Centre, and I was thinking about these kind of new bodies of work. So I had some kind of some mental space to think about new work. And I suppose this emerged from making photographs and making the small drawings of the flag works. And of course, Britain left the EU on the 30th of January. I was in France, and I watched the ceremony kind of over and over of the officials kind of removing the flag.
Almost funereal, I thought. Actually.
Yeah, it was very solemn. It was very funereal. And this was all kind of going around in my head, and I was painting these flags, and flags they're weird things. I mean, now that I've made this piece here, so originally it was a Brexit piece. It was almost like a portrait of Brexit. That's what I originally envisaged it as. And then we had this very long stretch of time, and of course, Aoife started talking to me about the exhibition, and Aoife Ruan, the curator from the Highlands, and we had a kind of many conversations, and I envisaged that it would be printed, but we had a stretch of time. We had a year and a half, and I had a year and a half to test the piece, both kind of physically and almost mentally as well. And in the end, it has ended up, rather than printing, all of the EU flags are obviously translated into monochrome, and they're all hand painted on silk. So the piece has become more about mourning and sadness, which there is mourning and sadness about Brexit, but because we've had COVID as well, I think, they're kind of sculptural and they hang down, and flags are very weird things. They're very emblematic, of course. People wave them in celebration, and then they look so sad when they're all tattered and
of course,
on the
and we have
ground.
such a strong history on this island of Ireland.
Yeah.
Every year, where they've caused such trouble and strife and all that. It's an incredibly powerful piece, and again, when you walk in and you just see its impact, it's. I was really struck by it. There's mournful was kind of the first thing that kind of struck me. But so. You also, of course, then Lemon, you've documented Black Lives Matters, Me Too, the Yellow Vests in Paris. I think the Occupy movement in New York and in London. So have you always been very politically interested and motivated, and has that influenced previous bodies of work, say prior to 10 or 12 years ago?
I think the work to do with protest is more specifically political. The work before was more observational, and of course this work is observational as well, but it is very specific moments, and they're depicted in particular kind of ways. So no, I think the work became more political, about a decade ago.
And the other work in particular I wanted to speak to you about is this incredible piece in a huge wall to the left of the entrance to the gallery, which is a new piece again that you've made specifically for this space. And actually, that's one of the great things about a show like this, that Aoife Ruan, who is the curator at Highlines, had a different version of this, if you like, and then you've reacted to this space. And then, of course, this will go on to the Butler Gallery in Kilkenny, Anna Sullivan there, which it'll take on a whole new life. I love that about shows, about how they evolve. But maybe just talk to us a little bit about this particular piece.
Sure. I mean, I suppose I should mention mention, one thing that was a huge help, apart of course from the work being commissioned by Aoife Moran and yourself and Anna, for the touring, is that the funding that came through the Arts Council touring, and also an Arts Council bursary that really helped me focus and on this work. So the kind of material cost of making things like this, it kind of has to come from somewhere.
Yes.
So that's really important. But this particular piece, yes, I did make this particularly for the space. And you talked to me as well about when you walk into the space, of course you look straight at this wall, you look around, you take everything in, and then you turn around and there's this blank space. So this piece is called Cross-Final Brexit Protest. So it is a Brexit protest. It's a Brexit protest from the middle of 2018. And it's hand-painted on silk, and then the silk is tensioned between two bars. Now, this is, I think, maybe the fourth iteration of this image that I've made. Mm-hmm. And it was a really important image over the last 2 years. I showed it in Christea Roberts in London as a tiny drawing and as a huge painting. It's now gone to the Glucksman. And it is the shape of a cross. But with this piece, I wanted to make the center kind of more faded out. So the ink becomes kind of more faded out in the center. And it's about, I suppose, how Brexit has kind of hollowed out the center in UK politics. It's become much more between right and left. That was one thing. And then the other kind of particular thing about this image is that the way that the buildings kind of float above the crowd, so that these political events and the kind of protesting and and just the way that Brexit happened, it kind of has destabilized politics kind of so much. I mean, now in a way it's kind of stabilized itself just by pretending it never happened. but at that point, when I mid 2018, when there was these things happening, the kind of proroguing of Parliament and so on, so that this image is about imaging that, imaging that instability, imaging the crowd kind of pulling in different ways, and also this fading of the centre.
And are the protests that you always document, are they always current, or do you ever look back? Is there ever a sense of the historic?
Pretty much always current. I mean, I'm really interested in this idea of kind of painting almost current history. So this is, we're now in September, so this is 4 or 5 months ago. Yes, when I made the original image, it was just 6 months beforehand. So now it's nearly always pretty current. I'm kind of looking at current. I make an archive and I do pull them out, but yeah.
And actually, maybe one of the reasons that I'm kind of preempting asking you, it was you're now based in Belfast for the last number of years, and obviously, we've seen such unrest and that in Belfast in Northern Ireland for so many decades. Have you ever thought about taking on like a body or a time or an era from then?
Yeah, I mean, Belfast is a fascinating place to live as an artist. Of course, yeah. I mean, I lived in London for 18 years, which is why I suppose you have a lot of these bodies of work about the UK and about London. I mean, so I felt Brexit very personally as an Irish woman in London, and then I moved to Belfast just over 3.5 years ago. I mean, I'm not sure I would have made that particular flag work if I wasn't walking through Belfast and experiencing that visibility of the Union Jacks pre the 12th of July in Belfast. I mean, Belfast, of course, we have visible politics, and you have the power sharing arrangement. So the politics is kind of palpable there. So, it's a kind of fascinating place to live as an artist,
Did you feel like isolated, or what was your kind of main sense when it was? I remember staying up late that night watching the count on TV, and I think it was Sunderland's tally came through first of all, and it was quite alarming and shocking. But I often wondered, I've got some family who live in England, talking to them about how they felt that moment when they realised that, gosh, this is real now.
I was so upset. I was just devastated. I was in tears. Everybody, people were incredibly kind of shocked, and maybe we shouldn't have been. Maybe we should have realised what what was happening. And I suppose I kind of felt kind of excluded. I was a bit like, you don't want me here as a European. You don't want kind of your. I kind of it was really shocking and really upsetting. It was kind of. Politics goes on around us, all the time, in all of our lives, there's different decisions affect us. But that felt, for me, after 18 years in London, one of the biggest external political events. I mean, and that's...
Did that motivate your decision to move back to Ireland? Or?
Yes. Yeah, it did. Yeah. I still miss London.
Yeah, I bet. It's a rare enough thing, and it's an incredible thing to have a brother and sister showing at the festival, and it's a real joy, pardon the pun, that we have that. So, John, of course, is in Connemara with Pavilion, and you're in the city. This is your first time showing together?
Yes, it is unusual for siblings to show together at a big international festival. And John and I showed together really quite a long time ago at Temple Bar Gallery, and then we showed once as part of Vienna Art Week. But this is the first time we've both had really significant projects at the same event. And it's brilliant. It was kind of serendipity, and his project getting delayed, and then this project coming in, and it was an unexpected thing. So I suppose what's kind of interesting is John and I, you look at the work, and his is this incredibly lush, structural piece out in the bog, and this is this kind of black and white kind of monochrome piece. So you wouldn't immediately see the currents that kind of run through both, but there's a lot of themes that kind of run through both. John's kind of interested in ecology, in wanting to change things and wanting to kind of pull things backwards. And, I'm also interested in political transformation. So this idea of structures and trying to change something within the structure, and also, all artists do this, of course, but of translating real life into something else, I think we both deal with. And we talk a lot about it, so it's brilliant to share with him.
The one thing that's kind of obviously we hear for the last couple of weeks as the show is being installed, but when like walking back in and seeing it fully installed, it's incredible that we're so used to the power of image in our pockets and our telephones everywhere we go every day, every screen we turn on. So I'm always struck by like the originality of what you've achieved in this, and you've taken something that that we watch on our phones and we watched on TV. But you've given us something, just a new way of looking at things, I suppose, and especially with the kind of helicopter style kind of lens, I guess. So it's an incredibly powerful show, Joy. It's an honour to have you here at Galway International Arts Festival, and been a real pleasure working with Aoife Ruan, and of course I know Sullivan and Kilkenny as well. So thank you so much for this great show, and it runs here until the 18th of September, and I'm sure it will be an incredibly popular and a very busy show. So thank you very, very much, and thanks of course to the Arts Council for the support, and all of the Galway International Arts Festival's supporters and partners.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here, it really is. It's an honour as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.